Today, we explore the intense rise and fall of Adolf Hitler and his ideology that transformed 20th century history. From economic turmoil to totalitarian rule, Nazi Germany left an indelible mark on world history. The seeds of Nazism were sown in the aftermath of World War I, with Germany facing severe economic and political instability. The Treaty of Versailles imposed harsh reparations, leading to hyperinflation and widespread poverty. Adolf Hitler rose as Chancellor of Germany in 1933, seizing absolute power within months. We will unravel the Nazi Party's characteristics, Hitler's ambitions, and the global repercussions of this regime. Stay tuned to understand the roots and ramifications of one of history's darkest chapters. Nazism promoted an Aryan racial ideal, strict nationalism, and intense propaganda. Join us in this detailed analysis tailored for UPSC aspirants and history enthusiasts alike. Be prepared to see history's extremes and the lessons we draw from them today. Nazi policies reached into every part of life, from the economy to education, establishing a militaristic totalitarian state. Let's dive into the era of Nazism to understand its complex roots and far-reaching impact. Understanding Nazism's appeal and failure helps us appreciate the importance of democracy and human rights today. The regime collapsed in 1945, leaving Germany and much of Europe in ruins. Germany's defeat in World War I and the harsh Treaty of Versailles laid the groundwork for Nazism's rise.
Severe economic depression and national shame fueled anger and the desire for a new, strong leadership. The Treaty of Versailles imposed harsh penalties, including massive reparations, on Germany.
Hitler's charisma and promises of German revival won him widespread popularity across German society.
The Nazi Party capitalized on Germany's hardships, pledging jobs and national pride.
Hitler joined the Nazi Party in 1920, quickly rising to leadership through powerful oratory and propaganda.
Hitler's narratives of betrayal and conspiracy resonated, especially his stab-in-the-back myth blaming politicians and minorities.
Nazism's appeal was built on restoring German greatness and unity under a strong authoritarian rule.
The stab-in-the-back myth blamed Jews and socialists for Germany's World War I defeat, stoking anti-Semitic sentiments.
By 1933, Hitler was appointed Chancellor, and within months he had eliminated political opposition, establishing Nazi rule.
Through the Reichstag Fire Decree and the Enabling Act, Hitler legally consolidated total power.
The Enabling Act of 1933 allowed Hitler to rule by decree, bypassing parliament and enforcing totalitarian rule.
The Weimar Republic faced severe political instability, with hyperinflation eroding savings and causing widespread poverty.
Political factions, including communists and Nazis, clashed violently, creating a chaotic environment ripe for radical solutions.
The Nazis used propaganda to target youth, indoctrinating them with their ideology from a young age.
They also suppressed dissent, burning books and silencing opposition voices. This combination of propaganda, suppression, and promises of revival solidified Hitler's grip on power and set the stage for the horrors to come. The core of Nazism centered on Aryan racial superiority, with Hitler's vision of a pure German race.
Jewish people, Slavs, and other groups were deemed inferior, setting the stage for systemic discrimination. Nazi ideology classified Aryans as superior, leading to genocidal policies and segregation.
Nazi propaganda was pervasive, crafting a society that saw Hitler as the ultimate leader or Führer.
Media, schools, and public spaces were filled with images of Hitler, promoting unwavering loyalty to the Führer.
Joseph Goebbels, Hitler's propaganda minister, controlled all media to spread Nazi ideology.
The regime promoted Lebensraum, or living space, justifying invasions to expand German territory.
This expansionist policy led to aggressive invasions across Europe, igniting World War II.
Lebensraum was a key Nazi policy, leading to the displacement and deaths of millions in Eastern Europe.
Under the Führerprinzip, or leadership principle, Hitler was seen as the ultimate authority in all matters.
This totalitarian structure demanded absolute obedience from officials and citizens alike.
The Führerprinzip placed Hitler at the center, with authority over all political, social, and military matters.
The Hitler Youth was another key element, indoctrinating children with Nazi ideology from a young age.
Women were also targeted by propaganda, encouraged to embody the ideal Aryan mother and support the war effort.
Intellectuals and dissenters were silenced, ensuring no opposition to Nazi rule.
The impact of Nazi ideology was profound, leading to widespread destruction and the Holocaust. The legacy of Nazism remains a stark reminder of the dangers of totalitarianism and racial hatred. Initially, Nazi policies seemed to boost the economy, decreasing unemployment through infrastructure projects.
By 1936, Germany's unemployment had dropped significantly as infrastructure and military projects expanded.
Hitler's Autobahn project and arms industry revitalized German pride and gave citizens hope.
However, much of this prosperity was unsustainable as it relied on forced labor and military aggression.
As World War II progressed, Germany faced shortages, rationing, and severe inflation.
Forced labor camps supplied many wartime resources, with millions suffering under oppressive conditions.
The intense militarization further isolated Germany from international trade and increased wartime hardships.
Every aspect of life became subordinated to the war effort, deeply impacting civilian life.
By 1943, German cities faced severe bombing, with civilians struggling to survive amidst growing destruction.
The temporary advantages were outweighed by horrific disadvantages, widespread suffering, exploitation, and genocide.
The human cost of Nazi policies was incalculable as millions were displaced, imprisoned, or killed.
The Holocaust alone resulted in the deaths of 6 million Jews, among other targeted groups.
Nazi propaganda played a crucial role in masking the regime's brutal policies, presenting an image of unity and prosperity.
Social programs like the Winter Relief and Strength Through Joy were designed to win public support and loyalty.
The Hitler Youth indoctrinated children with Nazi ideology, preparing them for future roles in the regime.
Technological advancements, such as the development of the V-2 rocket, showcased Germany's scientific prowess but were often achieved through inhumane practices.
Many scientific projects relied on forced labor and unethical experiments, leading to significant human suffering.
After the war, Germany faced immense challenges in rebuilding, with the true cost of Nazi policies becoming painfully clear.
The Nuremberg Trials exposed the extent of the atrocities committed, holding Nazi leaders accountable for their crimes.
The legacy of Nazi policies serves as a stark reminder of the dangers of totalitarianism and unchecked power.
Today, Germany continues to educate future generations about the horrors of the Nazi era, ensuring that such atrocities are never repeated.
Pause 2s. One crucial aspect that fueled the rise and sustainment of Nazi Germany was its powerful propaganda machine. Joseph Goebbels, the Minister of Propaganda, masterminded a campaign that infiltrated every aspect of German life. The regime utilized newspapers, films, radio, and posters to spread their ideology and manipulate public opinion. Pause 2s. The propaganda was meticulously crafted to glorify Hitler as a savior of the German people, while dehumanizing Jews and other perceived enemies. Films like Triumph of the Will showcased grandiose Nazi rallies, instilling a sense of unity and invincibility among the populace. Radio broadcasts were used to disseminate Hitler's speeches, reaching millions and creating a direct line of influence into German homes. Pause 2s. Education was another critical tool. Textbooks were rewritten to reflect Nazi ideologies, and the Hitler Youth Organization indoctrinated young minds, ensuring a new generation would carry forward the regime's beliefs. The propaganda machine created a controlled reality where dissent was nearly impossible, and loyalty to the Führer was paramount. Pause 2s. However, the reach of Nazi propaganda extended beyond Germany. It aimed to influence other nations, spreading anti-Semitic and pro-German sentiments worldwide. This global influence sowed discord and contributed to the tensions leading up to World War II. Pause 2s. The effectiveness of Nazi propaganda cannot be understated. It was a pivotal force in maintaining the regime's power, suppressing opposition, and justifying the atrocities committed during the Holocaust. Understanding the mechanics of this propaganda machine is essential to comprehending how such a regime could rise and endure, leaving a lasting scar on human history. Pause 2s. As we move forward, we will delve into the global challenges created by Nazism, examining its impact on different countries and the international response. Pause 2s. The fall of Hitler and Nazi Germany was a dramatic and decisive chapter in world history. Pause 2s. As Allied forces closed in from the west and Soviet troops advanced from the east, the once seemingly invincible Third Reich began to crumble. Key battles, such as the Battle of Stalingrad and the D-Day invasion, marked significant turning points in the war. Pause 2s. The relentless advance of the Allies and the Red Army's push towards Berlin signaled the impending doom of Nazi Germany. Pause 2s. Hitler's leadership became increasingly erratic as the situation deteriorated. He issued desperate orders for counterattacks that were impossible to execute, and his trust in his generals waned. Pause 2s. The internal structure of the Nazi regime began to fracture. High-ranking officials, sensing the inevitable defeat, started to distance themselves from Hitler. Some even conspired to assassinate him in a bid to negotiate a more favorable surrender. Pause 2s. The most notable of these attempts was the July 20th plot, led by Klaus von Stauffenberg, which ultimately failed and led to a brutal crackdown on suspected conspirators. Pause 2s. As Soviet forces encircled Berlin, Hitler retreated to his bunker, where he spent his final days. On April 30th, 1945, with defeat imminent, Hitler took his own life, marking the end of his tyrannical rule. Pause 2x. The Nazi regime officially surrendered on May 8, 1945, known as Victory in Europe Day, bringing an end to 6 years of devastating conflict. Pause 2s. The fall of Nazi Germany was not just a military victory, but a triumph over a regime that epitomized hatred, oppression, and genocide. Pause 2s. The world was left to reckon with the horrors of the Holocaust and the immense human cost of the war. Pause 2s. As we move forward, we will explore the global challenges created by Nazism, examining its impact on different countries and the international response. Subhas Chandra Bose, a prominent leader in the Indian independence movement, sought alliances to free India from British rule. His journey led him to Nazi Germany during World War II. In 1941, Bose arrived in Germany and met with high-ranking Nazi officials, including Adolf Hitler. He believed that the enemy of his enemy could be his friend. Bose's efforts culminated in the formation of the Free India Legion, composed of Indian prisoners of war and expatriates. This legion was intended to fight alongside the Axis powers against the British. Although the legion saw limited action, Bose's alliance with Nazi Germany highlighted the global reach of the conflict and the complex web of alliances formed during the war. The collaboration between Bose and Hitler remains a controversial chapter in history, reflecting the desperate measures taken by leaders seeking liberation from colonial rule. Despite the controversial nature of his alliances, Bose is remembered as a key figure in India's struggle for independence, and his legacy continues to inspire debates and discussions to this day. Adolf Hitler's views on India were complex and often contradictory. He saw India primarily through the lens of British colonialism, which he both admired and despised. On one hand, Hitler admired the British Empire's ability to control such a vast and diverse territory. He believed that the British were a superior race, capable of ruling over lesser peoples. On the other hand, he was critical of the British for their inability to suppress the growing independence movements in India. He saw this as a sign of British weakness.
Hitler's interactions with Indian leaders were limited. One notable exception was Subhas Chandra Bose, an Indian nationalist who sought Nazi support for India's independence. Bose met with Hitler in 1942, hoping to gain his support for an armed struggle against British rule. However, Hitler was not particularly interested in India's independence.
Hitler's primary focus remained on Europe and his ambitions there. He saw India as a secondary theater, important only insofar as it could weaken the British. Despite this, the impact of World War II on India was significant. Indian soldiers fought in various theaters of the war, and the economic strain on Britain accelerated the push for Indian independence. Ultimately, the war and the fall of Nazi Germany contributed to the end of British colonial rule in India. Hitler's views and actions, while not central to India's independence, played a role in the broader context of the war. Subhas Chandra Bose, an Indian nationalist, sought support from Axis powers to challenge British colonial rule.
Bose believed that aligning with Germany and Japan could help weaken British control over India.
Bose met Hitler in 1942 and secured support to establish the Indian National Army, or INA.
Although Bose's alliance was strategic, his relationship with the Nazis remained complex and controversial.
Bose maintained his focus on Indian independence, despite ideological differences with the Nazis.
Bose's alliance with Axis powers was primarily driven by his vision of a free India.
The INA, backed by Japanese and German resources, aimed to liberate India but ultimately faced defeat.
Despite limited success, Bose's efforts inspired later generations of Indian nationalists.
The INA failed to gain significant ground but left a lasting impact on India's independence movement.
Bose's legacy remains influential, symbolizing determination and sacrifice for Indian independence.
Despite the controversial nature of his alliances, Bose is remembered as a significant figure in India's struggle.
Bose's legacy is honored in India as a patriot, with his slogan, "Give me blood and I will give you freedom," remembered widely.
In April 1945, as Allied forces closed in on Berlin, Adolf Hitler committed suicide in his bunker.
Hitler's death marked the collapse of Nazi Germany, leading to widespread devastation and despair among the German population.
The aftermath saw the Nuremberg Trials, where key Nazi leaders were prosecuted, and the world began to reckon with the horrors of the Holocaust.
The end of World War II led to significant geopolitical changes, including the formation of the United Nations and the start of the Cold War.
Bose's efforts, though controversial, are seen within the broader context of a world reshaped by the war and its aftermath.
The legacy of Bose and the INA continues to inspire, symbolizing the enduring fight for freedom and justice.
Hitler's view of India was rooted in colonialist ideology, seeing it as vital to Britain's empire.
He doubted India's ability to govern independently, showing limited interest in supporting Bose's ambitions.
Hitler held racist and colonialist views, considering Indians inferior and unworthy of self-rule.
Despite Bose's efforts, Hitler's support for Indian independence was more a tactical move than a genuine endorsement.
The Nazi regime viewed Bose's ambitions as secondary to its goals in Europe.
Hitler's support for Bose was mainly strategic, aiming to destabilize Britain rather than help India.
Hitler's ambivalence toward Indian autonomy highlighted his indifference to non-European nations.
Hitler regarded colonial subjects as irrelevant to his primary objectives of European dominance.
Nazi ideology disregarded most Asian and African countries, focusing on European conquest.
This limited support ultimately constrained Bose's ambitions and restricted INA's potential reach.
Despite ideological misalignment, Bose pressed on, symbolizing resilience in India's fight for freedom.
Bose's mission to secure international support faced challenges due to Nazi disregard for Indian independence.
In summary, Hitler's perspective on India was deeply rooted in colonialist and racist ideologies. He saw India as a tool to destabilize Britain, rather than a nation deserving of independence. Subhas Chandra Bose's efforts, though valiant, were constrained by these views. Bose's resilience and determination remain a powerful symbol of India's fight for freedom. To learn more about this complex chapter in history, explore our recommended readings and documentaries. Thank you for watching. Stay curious and keep exploring history. In April 1945, as Soviet forces encircled Berlin, Hitler faced the inevitable defeat of his vision.
Confined in his bunker, Hitler realized that the Nazi regime's end was near.
Soviet forces entered Berlin in April 1945, surrounding the city and sealing Germany's defeat.
On April 30th, 1945, Hitler took his own life, symbolizing the end of the Nazi era.
In his final moments, he ordered the destruction of remaining Nazi insignia, refusing to face the consequences.
Hitler's suicide marked a pivotal moment, as Germany surrendered soon after on May 8, 1945.
The end of World War II and the exposure of Nazi atrocities reshaped global standards of human rights.
The Nuremberg Trials, held post-war, set new precedents in prosecuting war crimes and human rights abuses.
The Nuremberg Trials tried Nazi leaders, establishing crimes against humanity as punishable offenses.
The legacy of Nazi Germany's fall remains a stark warning against totalitarianism and hatred.
History remembers this era as a reminder of humanity's darkest and most resilient moments.
WWII reshaped international relations, leading to the formation of the United Nations in 1945. The story of Nazi Germany serves as a powerful reminder of the dangers of extremism and unchecked power. Reflecting on these lessons helps us appreciate the values of democracy, tolerance, and global cooperation. The lessons from Wudu continue to influence modern policies on international peace and human rights. Thank you for watching. If you found this exploration insightful, please like, share, and subscribe for more content.